on a YouTube clip so I can put it on our website?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, Carol, we're good to go. Okay, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the CPA Forum, the Hanson CPA Forum. Tonight is April 8th, 2015. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce the rest of the members of the committee. But before I do that, I'd like to just state publicly, which I don't do often enough, how much I enjoy working with every single person up here, because they're a great group, they're a diverse group. We don't always agree, but that's what really brings the strength. We don't have fisticuffs, but but we have lively debates, and at the end of the day, I'm fairly confident that as a result of the lively debates, we reach the right conclusion. So my name is Laura Kemet. I'm the chairperson of the Community Preservation Committee, and I'm an at-large member. And well.
Bob Overholtzer, I'm an at-large member.
Kenny Mitchell, representing Parks and Fields.
Alan Clemens, representing the Historic Commission and the Historical Society.
Bob Sears, representing community housing.
Tom Hickey, at-large member.
And Patty Norton, at-large member.
And Mr. Kemet? Well, you are a member. Mr. Kemet / Brad Curlin is our Conservation Commission. So we'll just kick it off. We've got several people who have had projects, community preservation projects, and we're going to cut to that relatively soon. But I thought it would be helpful to kind of lay a foundation in terms of what is CPA, what is CPA in Hanson, and all of that good stuff. So CPA is really a truly unique, and I think probably self-serving, but I do think a beautiful law that was passed in Massachusetts, and it was modeled after the Cape Cod Community Land Bank, which was quite successful in Nantucket and down the Cape, where they set aside a specific specific percentage of a surcharge that was to be used for specific purposes. And so you'll see up on this screen, Nancy, I'm sorry, can we, Yep. You'll see that it can be used for open space protection, historic preservation, affordable housing, and outdoor recreation. And the thing about those categories, if you really stop and ponder them, if you're at a town meeting, you're very seldom going to have anybody proposing town warrant articles to fund any one of those particular uses. That's because times are tough. Fiscal times are tough. We're focusing on schools, we're focusing on infrastructure, snow removal and the like. And so the thought that we would have any money to spend on these things, which we all can agree improve the quality of life in a town as lovely as Hanson, they don't necessarily make it to the top of the pile of the needs. So that's the beautiful thing about this, is that for a very affordable amount of money for each home, this money is set aside. The money is raised locally. It's a surcharge on your taxes against your real estate property, and it needs to be adopted by a ballot, which we did in 2008. The other beautiful part of this is it's matched by the state. So the money that Hanson raises, we're in a pot of a pool where we get money from the state allocated to us based on a variety of factors, not the least of which is legislature decides at the end of the day. So in Hanson, as I mentioned, in 2008, we adopted CPA. The maximum that you can adopt as a town is 3%. And as you know, in Hanson, we're not high rollers, we're pretty conservative, so we went middle of the road at 1.5%. And it's turned out to be just the right balance for us, for our town. The 1.5%, there was a little bit of a misunderstanding a couple years ago. People kind of thought that this was a pure 1.5% tax on their property, but it really isn't. It's a surcharge on your real estate, and it ends up roughly equating to about $35 per household, which is why it is truly a manageable amount. And this isn't to downplay you know, any economic difficulties that people have. Certainly, that's not, you know, our intent. But we think that for $35 a year, when you hear about what can be done, what has been done, you'll agree it's a good $35. And if somebody was at Shaw's canning for CPA, I think you'd give them $35 for what we're able to deliver. So there are some exemptions, and that's important to note. So, you know, if you're elderly and you meet certain income criteria, then there are some exemptions for that, but everybody, regardless of your income criteria, is exempt on the first $100,000 of the value of your property. And as I mentioned, the amount that we raise is eligible for state match. And the beautiful part about this is, frankly, I would love to get a match like this on my 401k plan. I'd even like to get a rate of return on my 401k plan that was like this. I did back in the 80s, but that's a whole different story. So we get a match. We were a little bit of a late adopter because we adopted in 2008. We weren't in the glory years where there was 100% match in some of the years, the early years of adopting. By the time we got in, the real estate market had started to plummet a bit, and that does affect the match amounts. And so the most that we've gotten was 52%, which was actually last year. That was a wonderful year. But the lowest we've gotten is 26%, and that's still not too shabby. And if you look at the bottom of the slide, you'll see what does that translate to, bottom line? Well, that translates to over $305,000 in state match, and that's not too bad. I think of that in terms of, say, the Stone property, Poor Meadow Brook property. I think of that, thank you, state, thank you for helping us buy that, because that wasn't even our money. That was state money that really, if you kind of want to boil it down, bought that. The important part about this is that if we didn't have CPA, this match money would be going to other towns that have CPA money. So we get our share, we step up with the rest of the towns that have CPA. And once the state turns this over, this is ours, this is Hanson's to do with as we choose. And when I say we, I mean the town, and we'll get into that a little bit in in terms of how the money is allocated. But this becomes sacrosanct, and it is Hanson money, and it is set aside. So with that, the Community Preservation Committee already introduced you to some of the members, and the beauty of the act, the way that it's written, is that within it is an implicit check and balance system. So you've got people that come from a diversity of backgrounds. You have people that are from conservation, so that's one sort of, you know, mindset. You have people that are coming from planning, that's a different mindset. You have people that are from the historic, et cetera, parks and fields. And so while each person is an expert in that particular discipline and in the group that they happen to represent, we also learn from each other as we're going along and talking. And you'll find, as we often have, that just because Alan is the historic representation doesn't mean he hasn't done his stint on conservation and several other committees, because that's just the way it is. There's only so many fish in the pond, and we all swim in the same pond and often get reincarnated in different committees. So we share that information, and I might say very generously, with one another, and we really benefit from that. So the beauty of that is that by the time we get a project, we're not only able to work with proponents that are proposing the projects and help them identify whether it's something that's viable or not, but we've got people on the committee that have got a level of expertise, so when we go to kick the tires on a project, we know the right questions to ask. Now, all 9 of us may not know the right questions, but certainly if it's historic, Alan and Patty, you're going to lead us on the types of things we should be looking at. And if it's parks and fields, for instance, Kenny's been working with all those guys to try to get them to prioritize what's the most important expenditure for parks and fields. So we're really lucky to have this kind of diversity. So by requirement, our law, the Hanson, the way that we adopted it, has required members from Hanson Housing, which is Mr. Sears, Conservation, which is John, aka Brad Curlin, Planning Board. Right now we have a vacancy there, but we hope to fill that soon. Historic, and then Parks and Fields. And then the other 4 members are citizens at large. Okay. So, what criteria does CPC use? We've recently gone through quite a revamping of our application in an attempt to make it very user-friendly. And I think if you happen to go out on the Hanson Community Preservation website, you'll find it's quite useful. It's out there, and it's also on the town website under Community Preservation. But essentially, it needs to be for one of the purposes. The expenditure needs to be for one of the purposes that I mentioned earlier. So open space, housing, historic, and recreation. And the other thing that we really look for is what are your other funding sources? We constantly say this to the point of probably being boring, but we are not a welfare system. We are not going to fully fund a project unless we know that you have turned over every rock and you have looked for match money, you have looked for grant money, you have done private fundraising. What we don't want is people just coming to us, I have a great idea, CPC, give us money. And so we've really been lucky because we've had some great success with people coming to us with projects where they've done private fundraising or they've gotten state match, et cetera, et cetera. And so why do you care about this? You care about it because it means that your money's getting stretched as far as it can. So even though it's $35 per household, it does build up. But you can make sure that that $35 per household, we're always getting match money. So it's not just a handout of your $35, we're stretching that dollar. And we take that very, very seriously. And the other thing that we look for is we want to make sure that we don't have somebody who's a Don Quixote who thinks they've got a great idea and they're out there battling the windmill, but it turns out nobody else thought that was a great idea and they don't have a lot of support. So we make sure that the appropriate boards and committees support it. And by that I mean, for instance, if you had an open space proposition, you'd certainly want to have the buy-in from conservation and from open space. You know, if you had historic, from historic commission, et cetera, et cetera. So we look for letters of support, and again, financial support, because one of the things we've kind of really started to clarify in our minds is anybody can write a letter of support. Where's the money? Where's the financial support? So we're not just looking for, you know, the sort of empty promises and, oh, you know, glorious letters supporting these wonderful projects. We want to know that if, you know, a committee or a board supports the project, well, what are you willing to put up for money for the project? Or are you willing to help them get money for the project? So this is something that as we've grown in our tenure, we've become much more serious about and more disciplined about, and we plan on continuing to do that going forward. So that is our criteria. And that brings us to our CPA projects in motion. In the interest of kind of trying to kind of accommodate timing constraints and what have you, we're going to have to tweak this just a little bit, but I'm wondering, Bob, if I could get you to give us an update on the outdoor recreation area project, and if you don't mind just telling us the dollar amount and kind of the scope for those people who may not really have been aware of what the project was.
All right, so I guess to start, when I became the athletic director, actually I've been at Whitman Hanson now for, this is my 16th year in the school district, and one thing I noticed living in town and as a member of the school community, we don't have a lot of places for community members, especially the kids, to go someplace safe to, whether it's play basketball, play volleyball, work out, walking trails, things of that nature. So I'd always been kind of on the lookout in our town or on our school property, where could something like that be located? And I was always told there was really no place on the school site. Well, Ernie Sandlin, our facilities director, I was telling him when I became the athletic director, that's one of the things I'd like to do, and he located an area of land on the property, and working through conservation, we determined that it was a great site for it. And so I put together the proposal for the board to look at, and basically the proposal, you know, the total cost of the project is right around about $100,000. Most of what I'm trying to do is, we don't obviously have very much money at the school, but we've done a lot of fundraising. We've raised about $25,000 in real cash towards the project, and probably another $25,000 in donations in terms of work that's being done up there. Newcomb Tree was terrific with us once the project, we told them what our vision was. I won't lie, it's been a difficult road. Part of the reason why the road's been difficult is because I am pretty frugal, and you know, when you're getting people to do things for free, you're kind of on their watch. And that delayed us a little bit. And then finally, once we were ready to do the final land work, it was brought to our attention that our former assistant superintendent had some concerns about actually, did we meet all the conservation requirements? Ernie Sandlin and I felt like we did. The assistant superintendent wanted to make sure that we, dotted all our i's and crossed our t's. So we had a second study done, and we worked with conservation again a second time, and we just got that approval. And then obviously we had a very tough winter, and so things had kind of stopped again. But now we're in really good shape. Casoli Sand and Gravel is going to be doing the final prep work on the land. They told me by the end of April, or he just texted me today and said by the end of April, or sometime in April, they'll be done with that part of the work. And then from there, it should really come together quickly. Right now, we're working with 3 different recreation companies in terms of the fitness equipment that we want, and that's really geared more towards community members more than high school students, because our high school kids have access to a wonderful gym, a wonderful facility. Not to say that high school kids won't use it, but I'm trying to get some things that, as citizens come when they walk around our facility, it'd be nice if they had some areas where they might be able to do some sit-ups or some push-ups or some, just nothing extreme, but just something where they can get a good workout. And so that part should be done by the end of April, and the school's kind of planning an area of work on their own, which is going to involve some asphalt, and we're going to see if we can dovetail on that to get a better price than we've been getting from the vendors. We did have a vendor that was going to do it for free in terms of the asphalt, which was great. I felt great about that, but then the person lost their job, or left. I'm sorry, I don't know if he lost his job or quit or what happened, but that offer has since been rescinded. But we're still working with a couple other vendors that are willing to do things at cost. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that I know we've all waited a long time for this to come about, but I really think that in June we might be able to have a great community event up there. To do some fundraising for some different things. I think it's going to be a great area for the community to get together to do all kinds of activities, whether it's you wanted to do, have that be the start and end place of a 5K race, or if you wanted to do a 24-hour basketball marathon, or whatever it is. It's going to be a great place for the residents of Hanson, and obviously I have a vested interest as the athletic director, a great place for our kids. We get out of school at 1:35 in the afternoon because of all the budget problems that we have in town, and it's just so early for kids to be sprung onto the community, and I'm just really hoping that when the weather gets better and we have that facility, we'll see kids out there and playing basketball, playing volleyball, and we're going to put a little one of the 2 courts is going to be set up so that they can play street hockey on it. And there's a lot of room there, so this will be the first stage of it, and then hopefully we'll be able to add some other things, picnic tables and things like that.
We've got my fundraising gears going. I'm
Yeah,
thinking,
it's going to be a
how
great
can we use that area?
It's going to be a great location for that.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, one of the we're talking about doing trying to bring some awareness to the cause of suicide, particularly teen suicide.
Yeah.
And we've lost 2 people in our community, 2 former students within the last year, and they both were athletes. And we talked about maybe we do something, a basketball fundraiser where the kids come out and doing an awareness like that. So we really don't have places like that right now, but I think this is going to be a great location. And I think this is, as a resident of town, this is just such a great organization to be able to get the state to kick in on something like this through the match, and then for the community to be able to support it as well. I think people are a little bit more, I guess, agreeable to spend some of the money on projects like this, as you mentioned, in this kind of a setting rather than through taxation. It really is a great project.
Well, we're thrilled that you brought the project to us. We're totally looking forward to seeing it.
Yes,
and
me too.
the unveiling and the ribbon cutting and all that.
Yeah.
And you're certainly not alone. The guys that were doing Botieri, of course, fell into a lot of weather issues
Yes.
too. So,
Yeah.
probably that same timing. So it'll be exciting to see all of the funded projects starting to pop up all over town.
And a major factor in how long it's taken us to bring this to fruition, aside from our own fundraising that we've been doing. We've done everything from a concert with Ronan Tynan to raffles to car washes. We've done all kinds of different fundraising. But really the biggest thing is trying to get all these great community members to do different things for free. Terry McSweeney did all the engineering for us for free.
Yep.
And just so many things that would have cost so much money that people have stepped up to help us. And you talked about having, good bang for your buck. And I spend your money, our money, very, like it's my own, because
Yep.
I think everybody works so hard for it.
Well, we really appreciate it. Thank you,
All right.
Bob, for
All right,
bringing it
thanks.
to us.
And I do have to get to the school committee meeting, so
Yep.
I appreciate you taking me
Okay,
first.
yep, no problem.
Thank you very much.
Phil Clemens asked,
Does anybody have any questions
anybody
or
have any
anything? I'm
questions?
sorry.
What was it,
Yeah.
the amount, $50,000 that was requested, approved, and the town meeting approved for the project?
Yes.
Through this
Yes.
program?
Yeah, so,
It was 50,000?
and I come up with, through the donations and everything else, the rest of it.
Right,
Um,
okay, so I make sure the community understands this program is approved, and the community has approved $50,000.
Right.
That's correct. And to date, we've actually, of that, only expended, I want to say $9,000 of it. We've spent kind of our money first for
Yep.
a lot of the things that have happened.
Okay, good.
And the town administrator's been helping, will be helping with making sure we do all the procurement stuff.
Perfect.
on
following the
target.
bid process
Yes,
and all
exactly,
that. Yep.
exactly.
Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bob.
Take care, Bob,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
So I have an update from Phil Clemens, and please pardon me reading. I didn't have time to print this out, so this should be fun. As you may know, this project is complete, and that would be the Stone property, Poor Meadow Brook Conservation Area. Between May and September 2014, the town acquired the property, recorded the transaction at the Registry of Deeds, and put the conservation restriction in place. The Town Forest Survey, collaboration with the Youth Baseball Program, survey field marking of all boundary points is complete, including concrete monuments around the ball field and highway department areas. One additional monument was placed to define the easement area, which overlies the existing septic system serving Indian Head School. The Town Forest Committee has approved payment of the invoice from land planning. And then it just sort of goes on, but I guess they're working on signage, and the baseball committee is working on that project. And I think that I got an email from, and I apologize for scrolling through while I'm on here, from Rob O'Brien saying that they will start the work in July because of the snow. The work was supposed to have begun last month, but Mother Nature did not cooperate. So by September, all field and parking lot work should be complete. AquaTurf is from Connecticut, and they are the ones who will be doing the work. So that's the update on the baseball field. Alan, I was wondering if you would be so kind as to give us an update on the Bonnie House siding project?
Okay, as you probably know, through CPC, we put a new roof on the house and pointed up the chimneys. And last year, we had a outfit come in and replace a lot of beams under the house. There's still more to be done. And in cooperation with the Southeastern Votech, they're going to do the exterior siding on the house, replace windows and doors. Of course, the weather has kind of put a crimp on that too. It's still snow drifted around the house, so I'm hoping when the snow melts, why they'll be able to go ahead and do it. Our hope eventually is to get the house in such shape that it can be used to house all the historic material that's been donated to the Historical Society. It's in the schoolhouse and various people's homes. Some of it is quite valuable, and it really should be in a safe place. Possibly, we may be able to get the upstairs in a position where it could be rented to someone who could look out for it, and plus bring a small rent into the house, to the town, which would help to defray the cost of maintaining the house. It's, as I said, due to the weather, why things have been moving kind of slowly, but hopefully this spring. We have the money for the siding and the windows, and it's just a matter of getting it done.
Well, I think it's going to look marvelous when it's done, and it will just be another positive step up at that Plymouth County Hospital property, just to show that it's still vital and moving forward. So we thank you, and of course, in advance, we thank the South Shore Vocational High School for helping out. Yes, Patty?
I just want people to know, this is one of our items that we have procured for the Historical Society. It is an original Seth Thomas
Seth Miller Briggs violin that was made here in Hanson in the early 1900s. And it was donated to us by a family member that used to live here in Hanson, by Mr. Frank Voss. And I just want people to know, this is something we would like to eventually house at the Historical Society, but it needs to have climate-controlled conditions, which we don't have at the schoolhouse.
Right, you couldn't have that outside, it would
No,
just completely
no.
destroy it.
So I just want people
Yeah.
to know, this is one of the reasons we're trying to do that.
That's an excellent example, Patty, and I think, when is your yard sale for the Hanson Historical Society?
That's
Or-
coming in September.
Well, I'm sorry, your strawberry.
Oh, Strawberry Festival's in
Yeah.
June. And
So,
we-
but if people come to the Strawberry Fest, they, you know, they could take a peek in the schoolhouse
In
and
the
see the
schoolhouse.
types of things that you guys have got there. Well, that's not all of the materials, because some of the more precious things are at people's houses, but
people's
we'll give
homes.
you an idea of the volume
Yeah.
of items that are there, and these are very precious resources.
And we have a lot of pictures and documents that we can't show.
Right,
That would be nice to be able to rotate them periodically and be able to show them.
yep, it would be great. Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Patty, that's a great example. We appreciate you bringing that. Carol, I think at this point, we're going to take a look at the book scanner, which requires a bit of a field trip to the historical document room of the library. So, will you come along with us, Carol? Okay, great.
Hello, I'm Patty Norton. I am from Hanson Historical Society. Hanson Historical Society has been talking to the town and our own request, and we needed something to preserve some of our items, our paper items. And we have some old books and items like that, as well as the town. And so we didn't know what to do, so we presented to CPC a request for $20,000. Mr. Stephen Kemet here decided that he would be able to build the item for about $18,000. So that's what it costs.
1,800.
I'm sorry, $1,800. Thank you. $1,800. And we built this item for $1,800, and it is to scan a book. You take a photocopy of it, you put it on a flash drive or on your computer, and then you can keep it from that, and then you can put it on your website, or you can take it to the town, or any other request you'd like to have. But this, we have a lot of books that you cannot open up very well. They're so old and ancient. And this we thought would be a very good idea. As you can see here, it does not press down real hard on the book. It just opens very faintly. And we have an older book there that you can't lay it flat on a regular copy machine. It would ruin the binding of it. And so that is why we decided to do something along this line. Okay, Stephen Kemet is the person that built this, and he will talk from here on. Thank you.
So the machine operates based on a glass platen that gently presses the book so that you can get a flat image. The cameras are focused on each individual book so that when you're taking images of the book you can size it according to different sizes and make sure that you're getting a good crisp image of each page. So basically all you do after you've focused your cameras and you've gotten all the equipment powered on and connected to each other is you simply flip pages, lower the platen, and hit the space bar on the computer that's attached to it, and it keeps taking images and sorts them in accordance with which page you're taking. Odd numbers for one camera, even numbers for the other, and that's already all set into it before you even put the book on there. So then once you get your images, there are programs on the computer that will then clean them up, that will put borders on them, and then will process them into PDF files. So it's fairly simple and easy to use, and it will allow us to scan and preserve books that otherwise would have to be damaged or would require incredibly expensive machines in order to do. This replaces a machine that could cost as little as $5,000 and upwards of $20,000 to $25,000. So.
How long will it take you to scan a book, see that size on that?
Well, it's a process, but it's no slower than Google Books uses.
Okay.
So with a book like this, you can process about 10 to 15 pages a minute, which ends up being about an hour or two for a book this size, and then post-processing can take about a half hour, 45 minutes. But then after that, you've got access to this book forever. You can print it out and you can change the quality of the images that you have on it. because you start with the raw image and you have all of the other processed images afterwards.
And it's also good for putting it out on the web for someone that has never seen this before. For the town, an old town book, that would be very nice. Maybe an old census book that a lot of people might be very interested in. So you could have people not even from here, from Hanson. Let's say the family moved to Pennsylvania or further out to California. That person can then ask online if they could have a copy of it and or view it.
Now, is this something that you're gonna consider putting in the boarding house once that's completed?
I don't think it will fit there,
Okay.
and it has to be secured, so we're having it here for right now. I haven't even thought that far.
Okay.
But most of the records are here that we want to have copied and or in the Hanson Historical Society building.
And I think it's important to note that a couple of CPC funding requests that we received were from the town clerk and also from the town assessor, and that those were for $5,000 and $6,000 and $7,000, and that was just for one set of documents to get copied by an outfit. I believe it's up in Maine, Brown something or
Vermont.
another. Oh, Ellen, you
Vermont,
would
yeah.
know, yeah. And so, I mean, really, just right out of the gate, you can see what a cost savings this would be. And Patty, as you alluded to earlier, really it's about accessibility, making these documents accessible to your average Joe sitting at home on his PC who wants to look up something.
Right.
That otherwise he would have had to have come in and perhaps had the librarian have to touch it, or, you know, white glove treatment, or perhaps not even have access to it if it was really in dire shape. So we think it's a great example of, again, stretching the dollar and ingenuity. Oh.
You see, they make all the stuff out of chrome and stuff. There's no reason it can't be made out of wood.
You have no idea how long it took in our days.
Well, maybe we'll put it online so you can look it up.
And I was thinking, we said,
The computer's actually part of the price of the book.
oh, it is?
Yeah, I admire his tenacity.
I can only do a couple pages a minute. You said you could do 10 or 12 pages. That's
Patty and John Norton from the Historical Society have acquired old newspapers. And this is the centennial of the Bunker Hill Monument. And it just is newspaper that hasn't been cut or anything.
No.
But this shows what happened that day. It talks about it. And this shows the Charles River and the plan of the town of Boston and provincial camp and what they were going to do.
So this is going to be one of the candidates.
This is one of the things that we want to scan
Yep.
and make it available to the public
Yep.
at large.
That's great. And you know, if you're into genealogy, and I have an aunt who's really into genealogy.
And I am.
You know, if access to these types of things is just invaluable for putting together all those little pieces. So it's really, it's great.
To do the processing and stuff like that.
Oh, no, I'm talking about to operate it.
Thank you too for your.
Nice job. Okay, so next up, we've heard what we've done so far, but we have a bright future, and we want to talk about that too. And one of the things that we want to talk about is that we're in the process of developing a CPA master plan for Hanson using the master plan itself, the master plan, the town master plan. And then also we've gone to each of the town committees and boards and asked them for their plans. So for instance, Camp Kawani has shared their list of priorities, which we're delighted to have because we're going to integrate that. And Mr. Mitchell is earning his negotiation badge, working with all of the various athletic groups. And we've got the Hanson Historic Commission working on a plan, and one of the things that we're going to be working with them towards getting is an inventory of all of the historical buildings, finishing up an inventory of all of the historical buildings in Hanson that will help us know which buildings are historically significant, so that when we have projects come before us that are historical in nature or purport to be historic in nature, we will have that as our guiding light. So one of the other things that we've done is, you may be aware that we've got that blight called Plymouth County Hospital up on High Street. And ever since this group was initially put together, one of the things we've talked about was, of course, Camp Kawani, because we could all see the beauty of Camp Kawani, and how it was really something simpatico with what CPA does. But The other area that we've always thought that we probably would play a role in, and would yet to be defined, is Plymouth County Hospital. And so about a month or so ago, the Old Colony Planning Council revealed initial thoughts on how that property could be used. Bottom line, a lot of it had to do with housing, mixed housing, yada yada. Some of which would be CPA eligible, the majority of which would not. One of the things that we would really like to see is that property cleaned up and then of course put to whatever use the town believes it should be put to. So one of the things we thought would be helpful was, why don't we ask people how they think we should spend CPA money, whether they think that we should spend CPA money on Plymouth County Hospital, et cetera, et cetera. And so we put out a survey and people actually responded, which was delightful. And 54 people responded. Okay, so that's not, earth-shattering, but it's 54 interested people who expressed their opinion. So one of the first questions we asked was, as I mentioned earlier, CPA money can only be spent in certain categories, and 10% is required to be spent open space, 10% historic, and 10% in housing. But that remaining 70% can be spent in any of those categories or sort of general open recreation, so trails, walkways, that type of thing, what's called passive recreation, and also fields. So back 2 years ago, CPA was tweaked so that you can rehabilitate fields, and that was a big change. So we asked people, in which category would you like to see the Community Preservation Committee invest more money? And by and large, open space was the one that we really, 51% of the people said open space. Housing, and I'll get to that in a minute, is much maligned and really misunderstood, but people really aren't into us spending the CPA money on housing. Historic preservation and recreation were kind of neck and neck. So, then again, we got a little more specific, get a little bit more into the weeds, and we said, okay, here's a couple of types of projects that we've all been kind of tossing around. We've talked to other boards and committees about, we've had people talk to us about, people stop us at Shaw's and talk about. And so these were renovating Camp Kawani, renovating historic buildings, developing open space at Plymouth County Hospital, acquiring additional open space, and rehabilitating existing parks, fields, in town. Now, it was interesting when we got these results, developing open space at Plymouth County Hospital. Again, it was 54 people, but 35% of them said they thought that was something we should probably take a look at. And this theme will recur throughout some of the other questions that we ask. So then the next question we asked was, okay, let's get a little bit more specific on each of the categories. If we think about open space, how do you want to see Hanson CPA money invested for open space? And interesting was people wanted us to acquire some more open space, 32%, and then 56% really wanted better access and knowledge of the existing space. So of course we've shared these results with the Open Space Committee and Conservation, and we will use the results, I should have said really at the beginning of this, we're going to definitely use these results to shape and inform us on future projects. And we would really hope that if you're one of the 54 diehards who filled out this survey, would love to hear from you, would love for you to come to a meeting, and would love for you to offer up your ideas. The more, the merrier, and we really would like to hear from you. So then we got a little bit more specific, and we said, in terms of housing, I would like to see Hanson CPA money invested in. And so housing, as I mentioned earlier, is much maligned and misunderstood. The categories that I kind of threw out there were new development of affordable housing or helping low-income families purchase new homes in Hanson. Now, we got interesting comments on this. No more housing, exclamation mark. No money towards housing. Do not spend any money on housing. Helping low-income families purchase existing homes in Hanson. That was positive. Somebody wanted us to do that. Mixed-use housing that includes business opportunities and affordable with market rate housing. Example, Hingham Shipyard on a smaller scale. There's nothing to do or buy in Hanson. That was a lot in one comment there. Cleaning up abandoned homes, purchase homes for low-income rentals. I don't want it invested in housing. None. Senior housing, elderly housing, no housing, less new housing, elderly-only housing. I would prefer that this money not be invested in housing. So as we can see, we are divided on the subject of housing. Some do not want any, some want it on elderly. And this is a contentious subject. I really don't mean to make light of it. But one of the things we do know is that CPA requires that 10% of what we get be set aside for housing. It doesn't dictate specifically what it can be spent on. I mean, there are, of course, parameters. But we've talked, for instance, Bob Sears, who is our Housing Authority representative and the chairman of the Housing Authority, of the committee, has brought in people from other towns to talk about the types of projects that they're doing. I just saw a great article about veterans housing that was being done with CPA money. So again, it may be that people are thinking affordable housing, Section 8 and all those kinds of things that really seem to get a visceral reaction from people one way or the other. But there are, within the parameters of the housing use for CPA money, there's an abundance of opportunity and choices, and we're not limited to one type of housing or another. So it's something that I will definitely continue to look to Bob and his committee, who I know have really been looking at this. But again, one of the reasons why nothing has been done on housing at this point is simply housing is very expensive in this area, in this geographic area. So in order for us to accumulate enough money to actually even be able to move forward with the housing project, it's going to take a bit of time. And so we're starting to build that money up. And Bob, I don't know if you want to quickly address this, because I want to move on to the rest of the survey, but did you want to chime in? And
Well, the program has about 115,000, give or take, set aside, the 10% used for housing. And we now have just enhanced, the Hanson Housing Authority works out of Meeting House Lane of Route 14 behind Shaw's. And that we just brought a couple of people on that work for the Housing Authority, and that they work out of Brockton, and they also serve Hanson. And these two people both come from communities that have CPA. So they can bring a wealth of knowledge, because they're up to speed like I am, versus another volunteer who doesn't work with it all the time. They're not thinking in terms of out of the box what the community can do. And we've seen some, as Laura just said, other communities do some things that are labeled housing that can make a significant difference in the community and in some people's lives within the parameters of the program.
Yep.
So now we just got some funds accumulated, so now we're going back and rethinking what's possible.
okay, great. Okay, then we got into, in terms of recreation, I would like to see Hanson CPA money invested in. And you'll notice that we keep saying, how do you want this money invested? And I really want to stop and focus on that for a minute, because that's really how the committee sees this. We are investing in the town. We are investing in improving the quality of life or preserving the quality of life to the extent it's open space, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we want to see the recreation money invested? So this was interesting. Boy, did people have a lot of different ideas on this. This one really, we hit pay dirt on. Walking trails, great. Maintain the open space we have, like the Smith-Narozowski property. We have a beautiful parcel of land that could be improved at Burridge Pond. Why not fix the access roads and make it a destination for families, pets, children, etc.? Rent out kayaks, canoes, have music, etc. I personally am a huge Burridge fan, but that was not me that put that in there. A great idea though. Hiking trails, walking trails, walking trails. So we do keep seeing hunting areas. Hancock Street, new playground on the side of the tracks. There is nothing there for families in the area. Create a park like in Hanover with paved trails and playing fields. Flying model airplane site location. There you go. Open space with walking trails. So we did hear a lot of walking trails, and again, it's something that we'll talk to open space and conservation about, as we will on all these, and it will inform, but we'd love proponents to come forward and propose those walking trails, and write up a proposal and sit down with us and let's see what we can do about it. In terms of historic preservation, this was very interesting too. I would like to see Hanson CPA money invested in historic village. 26%, interesting. Bonnie House restoration, so that's good news. And I just want to pause while we're talking about the Bonnie House. So Alan mentioned earlier, and then Patty gave us proof positive of why the Hanson Historic Society and the Hanson Historic Commission both feel very strongly that you know, we need to have an area to house these artifacts. They're important to our history, they're important to the town, and without our history, we're nothing. So one of the things Alan has devoted quite a bit of his time to is getting that Bonnie House shaped up on High Street. It's a multi-phase approach. The first phase was sort of, frankly, to just kind of batten down the hatches a little on the roof. Now we're looking at the outer envelope, and then the third phase will be some work in the interior to climate control, floors, et cetera, third and fourth phases. So we're really trying not to pile it on and do it all at once. We'll look to some private fundraising and grants, et cetera, because that's what we do. But just so that you know, the Bonnie House people it did resonate with people that they thought that we should keep on doing restoration up there, and that is the intention on a go-forward basis, to have a couple of more projects up there. Historic record preservation, and then this was historic inventory, which we talked about. It's great because we're planning on doing that. And then Camp Kewanee preservation. So that was great. And one of the things that if you attend town meeting in May, you will find that we indeed have got a wonderful project up at Camp Kewanee. It is the restoration of the North End cabins up there. They are in a very sad state right now, and Camp Kewanee is at a point where it is highly viable economically. They're renting that out to the Campfire Girls, but there's some safety issues with a lot of those cabins. So Jim Flanagan and the crew up there, Mariah and you know, all of the Recreation Commission got together and thought that that would be something that the town could use. If you don't know this, you consider yourself informed now. Citizens can go up there and rent those cabins. I've done it, it's fun, it's beautiful, it's like being in the middle of New Hampshire, but you're really just in your backyard. And there'll be more cabins in better shape after we finish these. So the North End cabins will be revitalized, and you'll see that at town meeting. That's the first of what we hope will be a series of projects up at Camp Kewanee to bring it back to its original splendor and glory, although the volunteers up there have already done quite an admirable job, and it's looking quite good. There's still quite a bit that can be done within the confines of historic preservation. And that whole site is, with the exception of 2 buildings, all of the buildings there are on the National Historic Register. The site itself is on the National Historic Register, and then all of the buildings, but for 2, are on there. So it certainly meets the criteria under historic preservation. That's historic preservation. And then in terms of comments, we said, and I'm not really sure what property they were talking about. The property is a major eyesore on High Street, Tarrytown. I think they mean Plymouth County Hospital, I'm guessing. Don't spend money on this, meaning historic preservation, and Camp Kewanee if it's a moneymaker. Well, it is a moneymaker, so that was good feedback. So that kind of concludes most of the specific. Then I had a last question that we asked, which was rate the following projects in terms of the projects that we've already funded. And to be honest with you, it was kind of evenly spread. Thomas Mill, the Stone property, Poor Meadow Brook, you know, people were, it was interesting how it was scattered really. Everybody had their favorites and sort of picked those. So we certainly will continue to do surveys. It was the first survey that we did. We appreciate everybody that responded. That was excellent. And as I mentioned, it will inform future projects in part. In addition to the feedback we get from all of you and from the towns and boards, I don't know, at this point, I'm gonna open it up for questions, comments. Did anybody on the committee want to say anything or add anything?
I just want the public to realize that the Bonnie House, the Historical Society and the Historic Commission are hoping eventually in the future, and I don't mean 2 years, probably within the next 10 or so, to be able to make a village, an old-time village out of the Bonnie House area, bringing our one-room schoolhouse up there, and we have the cobbler shop, and then you have the hearse building that was down at Fern Hill that housed the original hearse in town, and just all of those up there in one spot instead of having things scattered around town. And that will be easier if and when the school children visit, they can stop at one spot and see everything at once.
Yes, that's
Just so
an excellent point.
you're aware of what we're
You've got the
thinking.
two-hole, Patty.
Yeah.
We cannot forget the two-hole, don't overlook that. That's great, and again, that harkens back to the point that we were talking about earlier, where you guys have a vision. The committee, the commission and the society have got a vision. We want to get on board with that. We want to see how we can help you achieve that vision, and CPA is a great way to do that. And the historic village was something people responded to in the survey quite positively too. Bob, Alan, Kenny, anything?
I just wanted to say that one other thing. I don't want to belabor the historic business too much, but it's my interest. We years ago, we started a survey of the older homes in town. It was about, I'd say, 1/3 finished, and then it sort of went by the wayside, and we would like to complete that because it's like 1/3 done. They took photographs, they got information and everything, and people that were interested in how old their home was, so the history of it would be outlined therein, and it was a pretty good project, and we'd like to revive that again.
Yeah, and I know that we've spoken to Michelle Mills and of
Yes.
course the rest of the commission, and I know it's something that she's planning on probably submitting for the October town meeting for us. We just couldn't pull it in quite under the line for the May town meeting, but it's something we think is vitally important, so we agree, Alan. Any other comments, Bob, anything? Any questions from the audience? Okay, well, we want to thank you again for listening to our update. We would encourage you to go onto the town website and look at the Community Preservation Committee. We would also encourage you to go on our fabulous website, hansongcommunitypreservation.org. And you will see all the projects that have been funded. You will see specific information about how much we have raised each year and how much we've been matched each year. Our application is also on there. And certainly we meet the second Wednesday of every month, and it's an open meeting. And we really would love to hear from you. We would love to have you come. If you've even got an inkling of an idea or something that you were wondering whether it could be funded by CPA, we would love to hear from you. So we would encourage you to attend. Those are at 7 p.m. in the Selectmen's meeting room. Thank you. And Carol, are we going to be able to get this on a YouTube clip so I can put it on our website? Yeah. Okay, great. All right, Carol, we're good to go. And Carol, are we going to be able to get this on a YouTube clip so I can put it on our website? Yeah. Okay, great. All right, Carol, we're good to go.